you know, a variety of sauces or ingredients, and then, you know, go from there. So if you're at home and you don't have, you know, you don't want to go to the shopping mart, or you go to the market or do things like that, you can kind of take things you have in house, basically using some simple ingredients. So we'll start by building the dough here, just so you guys can get an idea on how we might go through that. I'm going to send over to you guys a copy of the dough recipe when we're done, so everyone can have it. This is the dough recipe we use here in-house at Public. And in addition, we're also selling some of our dough online. So if you want to know more about that, we'll talk about it towards the end of the segment here. So without further ado, let's talk about ingredients. So what you want to do working here is we want to work wet ingredients into dry ingredients. So we're going to start out with the dry ingredients listed here on the recipe. And again, you can write these down if you'd like to. If not, we'll be sending over a list of ingredients, a recipe rather, so you can, you know, take that down afterwards. But essentially what we're doing is we're starting with this 5-quart mixer. This is a KitchenAid. It's a little beefier than probably your regular KitchenAid. It's able to hold a little bit more volume. I'll be sending over a double batch and a single batch that you can make in a smaller mixer. If you don't have a mixer, not a big deal at all. This dough can be made by hand. Same principles apply. You're going to utilize the wet ingredients going into the dry ingredients, okay? So first what I want to do is talk a little bit about how you're going to set up your dry ingredients. What we've got to start off with is 2 quarts of all-purpose flour. So I've put them in these deli quart containers here. All-purpose flour from the supermarket, just AP flour. I know there's been a run on flour lately. It's hard to find. People are buying up a lot of ingredients. You can use other varieties of flour that you might have at home. If, you know, I haven't done a lot of tests on gluten-free, but if you have a gluten sensitivity, you can certainly try other types of flours that would be that don't have gluten in them. This is also a great opportunity to experiment. But we're going to take 2 quarts of all-purpose or AP flour, all right? And those are going to go into the mixing bowl. In addition to that AP flour, what we're going to use is some whole wheat flour. So essentially AP flour is the starch of, or the endosperm of basically a flour kernel, right? So it's the inside, it's the starchy center. It's why it's so high in processed kind of gluten. But wheat flour actually has a hole in there too, so you have a little bit of protein, extra protein around there. It looks a little bit different, as you can see. It's got, you know, some flakes of grain in there. You could use a different type of flour here if you'd like as well. If you wanted to use something like flax, or, you know, anything you have on hand. Again, this is a time to be resourceful, a time to use as many ingredients that you might have lying around that you'd like to. So we're going to add that into dry ingredients as well. So again, that's 2 quarts of AP flour, and we're doing 2/3 cup of whole wheat flour into the dry ingredients. And then we're going to use a tablespoon of salt. Just 1 tablespoon of salt. That is kosher salt, what we like to use. Use this brand right here, Morton kosher salt. You can use a variety of generic kosher salts. If you don't have kosher salt, if you have like table salt that's iodized, salt at home, you can use that too. Just keep in mind that's going to be a little saltier. Here we're usually using salt for flavoring purpose. So if you're using, you know, a table salt at home, you might want to use a little bit less salt than you would in this environment. We're talking about, you know, maybe 2/3 of this much salt, or maybe cutting that into half, kind of to your taste. So if you're going to do a tablespoon of kosher, maybe you do a tablespoon and a half of table salt, or a half tablespoon, okay? And that's going to go in as well. So at this point, we're going to abandon the dry ingredients for a minute, and we're going to work on our wet ingredients. And that's where the sort of chemistry portion of this recipe is, and why it's important to treat that. We're going to start off by getting a quart of warm water. Now, this is probably the most crucial part of the entire process of making the dough. You want the water to be between 100 and 110 degrees. It's okay if it's not 100 degrees, it can be a little less, but you don't want it to be over because you don't want to kill the yeast. Okay, so we're going to be using an active dry yeast in this process, and we want to make sure that that yeast can bloom, and we don't want to kill it. That's going to do the heavy lifting of the dough process and really going to build out, the structure of our dough as well. So you want to make sure you're not going with like scalding hot tap water. What I like to think of between 100 and 110 is warm tap water. So if you're running water over your hand and you feel like you need to go to the bathroom, that's probably the zone of temperature you need to be in. Between that, just sort of, warm enough to wash your hands, not super hot. I've got a digital thermometer that I can use. That thermometer right here will give me a reading. It's an instant read thermometer. If you want to be doing this a lot at home, you can get one of these on Amazon. You can get them quite a few places. AAA, I think, Supply has them in town. Probably even Walmart carries these. But it's just going to give you a Fahrenheit reading and a Celsius reading if you're doing, metric. Basically, to get a temp of what your water is. So I'm going to go over to the sink here real quick and get us some tap water. All right, just a quart jug of tap water. We're reading at 113 right here, okay? So I can either let this set and cool down a little bit if I want, or I can pour a little bit out and add some cool water just till I get down below 110, which is, I think, important for the expedition of this demo. We'll just pour a little out.
Can anyone hear me now? Oh, it looks like maybe you can hear me now. Okay, I just wanted to remind people, Travis, who have joined us in the few minutes that you've gotten started here. If you are new to Zoom, be sure to expand it on your screen so that you can see up close and select the speaker view, which was sort of to the top right kind of region. And we will continue. Travis Russell with the Public is making pizza dough for us right now. Sorry, go ahead, Travis.
Oh, no worries. So, basically the water we've got here to 106, right? That's a pretty good target range. Between 100 and 110 is where we want to be. And I've gone ahead and made one prior to you guys coming on so you can see what we want to look for. So basically we're going to add dry yeast to this, and we're going to add some sugar. Those of you that have sugar sensitivities, we also use honey in this recipe. If you don't want to use sugar, you can omit it. You can use natural sugar if you want to. But what the sugar is going to do is it's going to accelerate the process of the yeast. Why that happens is the dry yeast is going to eat that sugar, which is a long chain structure, right? And it's going to basically create bubbles and activate the solution, the wet solution here that we're going to add into our dry ingredients. So, ingredients that you might be unsure about. Dry active yeast. This is Fleischmann's dry active yeast. I buy this at Sam's. You can get it there. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Dillon's. I'm sure you can get it at many grocers in town. Dillon's has the drive up service right now, which is nice if you think ahead. So if you're concerned about going into the grocery market and getting things, you can have them bring it out to your car. It's a nice, convenient way to go. This will last you for a long time. If you keep it in the refrigerator with just a lid on it and keep it dry, you're going to be good to go. This double pack of yeast probably makes, over, I'm guessing maybe, I would estimate 100 batches of dough. So we're in really good shape with this here. Again, we're just using a small amount This is what it looks like when it's out of the package.
Travis, how long does it last in the fridge, that
If you
yeast?
keep it, in the fridge, tempered and covered, months. I think what you'll find is you want to really see it react when you put it into something, right? And if you don't see it react, you know that it's expelled. It's sort of it's exhausted its ability to do what you want it to do. That's the important part. I would say testing it with some warm water before you get going is fine. But if you keep it covered, basically how we store it is in a deli, right? So this deli right here, covered lid, just like we're using these quart containers. This is something you'll find, in ubiquitous supply in most commercial kitchens. We keep it in here. You can see it's about halfway gone. This one's dated 3/11. So we're not too far, about 20 days there. I would say, we'll use this all up in the next month and a half or so. 3 months at the very minimum, if you keep it dry, you're going to be good on that. So, and maybe even longer. I would say that, again, testing is not a bad idea. But basically, what we do at that point is we're going to take the yeast and we're going to pour it into our water, right? And that yeast, it's kind of hard to do this without tipping over but I'm just going to stir it up a little bit to dissolve it. And what I want to see is over the period of about the next 20 minutes is I want to see sort of a sudsing happening to the yeast process. I'm going to add my sugar in right here. And again, I'm adding sugar because I want to accelerate the sugar amount. Let me just go over it. Again, I'll be putting this, posting this so you guys have it. That's a teaspoon of sugar.
And we'll put the recipe on kmuw.org under the Distance Socials page where we had the event link, by the way.
And then I got a tablespoon of Barkman honey here. So I'm going to pour that in too. So this is essentially going to be our honey wheat dough. I'm going to get all that honey out of there. And again, you want those sugars to be in the solution with that yeast because that's going to accelerate the activation process.
I know you're going to put the recipe up, but how much yeast was that?
It's a teaspoon in this recipe.
Okay.
So quite, not very much at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just stirring this up using my thermometer. I'm going to switch over here to a spatula. I'm just going to kind of agitate that. And what I like to do after that is if you're cooking already, say you got the oven on, let's say your house is hot because you like to keep it hot, maybe you're doing laundry in the room next door, go find this and put it in a warm place. What you want to do is you want to see that sudsing coming up to the top. It's going to be kind of like if you've ever poured a beer into a bottle and you see the top of it, the head come to the top, cascading up. That's what you're kind of looking for your yeast to do in this process.
Over the course of 15, 20 minutes?
Exactly right, correct. And this one doesn't have the exact volume I want, but you can see it's starting to suds up at the top. If I'm holding this down here a little bit. Let's see if I can tilt it. It's a little dark there, I apologize. But you'll also smell that sort of yeast smell blooming. So this is what it's called is blooming yeast, right? So you want to get this really activated before you mix it into the dough. And it's not uncharacteristic to see it actually start to bubble up over the container. That's possible. You set it in that dry, warm area, you might really start to see activation coming up across the top. Oftentimes what we do is when we're making dough in the morning, we come in every morning and make it in the restaurant because we'll go set it over by the ovens. That kind of ambient temperature in that part of the kitchen is, plus 76, 78 degrees. That's kind of target range where you want to be. And that heat's just going to let this continue to sort of activate as the yeast moves up.
Travis, we've got a question here. Yeast is harder to come by, at least in rural grocers. Amazon is double the price right now. Is there a difference between instant yeast and active dry yeast?
This is instant dry yeast. There are some other yeasts like baker's yeast that are cultured that are that you can use too. Follow the recipe that you're getting to. If it's instant yeast, it's probably instant active dry yeast. Fleischmann's one of the brands. There's like 5 or 6 brands that are pretty generic out there. From my understanding, if you have an instant dry or an instant active yeast, you're good to go.
But it needs to say instant. Is that the important word?
Yeah. You're wanting it to be able to be effective immediately, right? You don't want it to be something where you're building a, if you're making like a sourdough bread and you're doing your own starter and you're letting that kind of bloom over a period of time and you're feeding it every day. They're kind of creating your own starter. Here, we're basically accelerating that process by using active dry yeast, right? This is yeast that's been cultured and then basically dried and packed.
So you do want either instant, you want it to say either instant or active in order to have that faster process. Yes,
in my experience. If you have a name brand, is there a name brand that you have that we can look up?
Maybe this person will, is it Carol? Maybe this person will respond to that. If you have a brand, please type it into the chat. If they do, then I will interrupt you again. Go on for now.
So that yeast, again, is going to accelerate that process of blooming. And then what we want to do is we're going to add that wet ingredient into the dry ingredient. So this might be a little bit loud because I'm going to turn on mechanical mixer here. But again, if you've joined late, you do not need a mixer to do this process. You can use good old-fashioned mixing bowl. You can put the dry ingredients in the center, make a well, and hand fold it yourself, right? Basically what we're trying to do is hydrate the flour with this water. And it's going to be a relatively wet dough. It's not going to be super dry, which means it's, you're going to be a little bit difficult to work with in the beginning, but as it starts to proof, we'll be in good shape. So before we do that, actually, let's go ahead and do the dry ingredients first. Not get ahead of ourselves. So I'm just going to turn the mixer on here on a slow, low speed.
Do you guys love how his gloves match the mixer? I am appreciating that little detail.
And again, smell is another great indicator that yeast is blooming. You can really smell the yeast right now. Okay, now I'm going to lift it up into place. I'm going to scrape down the sides of the bowl. I need like a GoPro on top of my hat so I could show you.
Next time. One possible brand that person might have been asking about was SAF Instant, SAF Instant. That's,
let me look it up and see what.
Did you say what setting that was on? Was that kind of a slow mix?
You don't want to go too high because this dough is going to start to become elastic and you're going to put a lot of pressure on the motor of your mixer. So definitely don't, turn it up too high and get it going too hard. I've got it on setting 1 right now, and I'm just scraping down the dry ingredients on the side and take it off to show you. And in addition, I'm using a batter beater. If you have access to a dough hook, that's what you want to be using. That's ideal right here. Usually you have a whisk attachment, right? You also have this batter attachment, but this is the best dough hook because it's going to really get everything to incorporate on the side. It's also going to put less pressure on your motor of your unit. The reason we're not using a dough hook is we don't have a dough hook for this side of mixer. Our dough hook, we usually do this in a 20-quart mixer that we have in our prep room. So we'll be doing, a batch that's 6 times this, and it's got a giant hook to it. But
I always wondered what that little hook was for. I've seen that before and thought, it's
makes
half
you-
of a mixing attachment. What is
Right.
that?
Yeah, and bakers know this, far better than I do. That you really, when you get a mixer and you start to read through making doughs and what the ratio of water should be. Basically, it's a hydration ratio, right? The wetter your dough is how they rate it. And a lot of mixers don't want you going higher than a 1 gear if you have a super dry dough, pasta dough, things like that, because it's really going to put pressure on that motor and hurt it over the lifespan of that tool, right? So it's important to follow those guidelines and kind of look at recipes, not just to throw the ingredients in and go. This is not something we do all the time, so in lieu of using a hook, I thought it'd be important to show you guys how to do it in an electric mixer. In addition, if your dough looks drier than you think, you want everything incorporated, right? So I've got this dough right here. You can see it's starting to really come together. If it looks too dry or too wet to you, what that means is, here's that dough, right? It's sticky. It's elasticy, right? It pulls and snaps like that. That's where you want to be. If it looks a little too dry to you, you can add a touch of water. If it's a little too wet, add a little bit of flour, right? You got to kind of use your finesse skills there to kind of keep an eye on what you think it should look like. But again, you want it to have that kind of elasticity where you're pulling it and it's snapping like that. That's about where you want to be. So what I'm going to do is take literally a tablespoon of water.
Would you recommend that people put flour on their hands when they go to grab the dough? Or, I mean, you're wearing gloves, but...
Yeah. It's a bit difficult with gloves. If you're doing it at home and you're not wearing gloves, your hands are washed and you're protected, that, your hands are clean. Flour is totally going to help you keeping from dough sticking to your hands. You can see it sticks to that nitrile glove pretty quick. But I'm just going to take a little bit of water because this is a little bit drier than I like. I'm going to turn it back on for a minute. Actually, I'm going to lift it back up and then turn it back on. Okay, so now pull it all off the hook.
Is it extra sticky because of the honey, or is that just pizza
It's just
dough?
the gluten aspect of it.
Oh,
I think the honey probably has a little bit to do with it, but I mean, it's just, a sticky dough in general. But what we're going to do, I'm going to move this mixer out of the way. Now we're going to take a little bit of flour on the table here. We're just going to kind of hand form this. You can see it's kind of sticking into the bowl. I'm just letting the gravity pull it down. And I'm just giving it a couple revolutions here. Just folding it over. Kind of push down with your hands. Fold over. Now what I want to do is I want to let this rise, okay? What that means is I'm going to take a container. So this is a 6-liter, 6-quart container from Sam's. Anything you have, a big mixing bowl is cool. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to spray this or put oil on the inside. If you don't have a can of Pam spray at home, use olive oil, vegetable oil, any kind of oil you want that's got a neutral flavor and kind of get this nice and coated on the inside. And this is so that your dough won't stick into the container while it proofs. Right? So I've just sprayed the inside here. Then I'm going to set the dough right down inside. So it's sitting here at the 2-quart line, right about cresting there at the 2-quart line. And I'm going to go set this in a warm place in my kitchen. Again, if you're doing laundry, up on a shelf near it. somewhere warm. If you put it directly on a stove and you have like a vent on your stove that's coming out and pushing a lot of hot air, be careful because that hot air can overproof it. Overproofing is not going to totally ruin your batch. It's just going to make it more difficult to work with. It'll make it a more liquidy and thin it out. You'll see it really bloom up over the top of here. What we want to see this do is more than likely double in volume and maybe all the way up to the top of this bowl is where you're going to see this go. What I like to do is either put a warm towel over it. You can use saran wrap. I like the towel because I like it to have some air to escape. So typically what I'll do is I'll take a towel like this, just a kitchen towel, right? And I'll lay it over the top and I'll go set it in a warm place in the kitchen.
Okay. This is a really nice kind of recipe or an opportunity for people to try using a yeast, a rising recipe like that, when maybe they haven't done it before. In the morning, you do this stage of it, then you do some work from home, and then you come and right. Get it into the bowl or the tub and let it rise, and you go do something else. And the stages.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it over rises on you, one thing we do sometimes with that is we'll make it into bread. We'll throw it onto a tray, flour it, and we'll just bake it off like a ciabatta loaf. It's a really straightforward, simple yeast dough recipe here that we use for pizza, obviously, but it's really nice because I think it's really hard to mess up. As long as you've got your yeast activated and you see that process happen of that yeast blooming, and your dough rises after a couple hours, and you're good to go. You're really in good shape. So I'm gonna go put this in a warm place in the kitchen. And what I would do with that, since that is a double batch, is I would roll it out and I would cut it into 5 equal portions, and kind of do it that way. If you have a digital scale at home, something like this, that's how we do it. We usually weigh everything out. Instead of by volume, we do it by grams and weight. So we'll go 16 ounces on a dough. So a dough that we serve here at Public get made to 16 ounces, which is this size right here, right? So this is pre-made dough that I made last night when I was here in the kitchen cooking. You can see it's kind of got some flexibility to it. It's got nice form. This is another batch. If you can see by contrast, see how that one droops a little bit? That one got a little overproofed, right? So it's a little more elasticy.
So if that happens, you just make it into bread.
You can make it into pizza dough too. It's just going to be a little more difficult to work with when you're rolling it out. It doesn't want to hold its shape as well, right? That's what I've found, at least in my experience, is that it's going to activate just the way you want it to when you put it in the oven, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult to deal with. And another way to deal with that is, like, you can always add a little more flour, right? Move the screen down here. Add a little bit more flour here. Move my phone. We'll get back to that yeast question here in a second. And just work some more flour into the dough, right? Kind of always pulling the dough underneath itself like that. Like I like to take it and wrap the dough under the bottom of the ball. And it'll start to get a little bit of a buoyancy that wasn't there in the past. So that's one way to bring that dough back. I'll set that in the pan right there. But this one's got nice structure to it. It's looking real good. And now let's talk about cooking the dough, because I know that some people have access to convection ovens at home, others don't. We use convection ovens here at the restaurant to cook pizza. Some pizzas are done in conveyor belt ovens at restaurants, but basically convection just means you're going to have air circulated heat, right? It's going to sort of circulate air around the entire cabinet of the oven, as opposed to just hitting it right with straight heat that you would have in a conventional oven. It's totally fine. It's just going to add a little bit of time. In a conventional oven, I'm going to say you're going to be anywhere from 16 to 22 minutes on a dough cook total from start to finish. In our oven here, we can typically get it done in about 8 to 10 when we're running really hot. Now, on a convection oven for us, we're doing 500 degrees. Some of your home ovens might not have that kind of temperature. 400 to 450 is great. Here is the part where you're really going to have to kind of pay attention and use your culinary acumen to figure out whether or not you're done or you're not done on your dough. And basically that's the art of cooking. You're gonna, everything's about time and temperature really when it comes down to the kitchen. And so you're gonna have to check your dough and make sure, use your senses. I can smell that it smells like it's baking, look at it, check it, and really do the test of color. Once it starts to get a little bit of color on the dough on that first time in the oven, that's gonna be a proof. So let's go over that again. For me, on a 10-minute cook, 8-minute cook, I'm gonna be in that oven 4 to 5 minutes on a proof. I'm gonna pull it out. I'm gonna put my toppings on it, and I'm gonna put it back in for the equal amount of time to finish, okay? So if you're at home and you don't have a convection oven, you've got just a traditional oven, it only goes up to 425. I'm gonna say you're gonna be closer to between 8 and 10 minutes on your proof, right? Pull it out, look for color as your identifier, and then top it, put it back in the oven to finish. And we'll go over that here in the baking process so you can actually see what that looks like. So without further ado, let's roll one out here just so you can kind of see what we're working with.
What ounces, did you say it was 16 ounces for the?
So this is actually a Pizza Hut pie pan that I got some of these off of auction. We use what they use traditionally in their kitchen is these sort of like 1.25 inch deep pie pans, and that's how we bake them here.
Travis?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Someone wanted you to reiterate what the ounces were supposed to be on the pizza dough for one crust.
16 ounces. I use 16 ounces for that 12-inch pie pan. Another great thing, if you've got kiddos at home, split this in half. Make, a little mini pizza so everybody gets to make their own toppings. They get to customize it. It's really kind of a fun way to get them involved in the kitchen. Again, if your kids are anything like my son, he certainly doesn't like everything in the world. So he's going to want to design his own pizza, certainly. So that's, you can really make it to whatever you want, but for a 12-inch in diameter pie pan, we think 16 ounces works good. I'm going to show you how to do that, but we can also talk about, Carrie, do you mind grabbing the pizza stone out of the dishwasher? You can also use a cookie sheet. If you have sort of a heavy duty cookie sheet or even a light duty cookie sheet, that's fine. You can roll it out like a rustic shape. You don't necessarily need to go round. We've got a pizza stone that we use at home. This pizza stone has made many pies.
Oh.
It's totally blackened from oil and firing. You can see it's the original color of the stone. We've had this in our household for over 10 years now. But this would be a good one too. You could put this in your oven, get it heated up. If your oven doesn't even go up to 400, I've cooked on this stone at 375 before, right? The nice thing about a stone is you can preheat it a little bit, and it's going to absorb that heat, and it's going to give you a nice seal on the bottom of your pizza. So that's another sort of textural difference you'd have on your pie that you might not in a
What
metal.
does that mean, a seal on the bottom of the pizza?
Well, your dough, what you want to do is you want to get a seal on the crust. So effectively, when we're baking the proof, you're going to see that color that I was talking about. That color means that you've kind of sealed the outside, and then it's going to continue to cook from the inside with moisture. All that steam is going to try to escape, and it's going to continue to cook the dough on the inside. So basically, the heat from the stone is going to sear on the bottom and seal that dough, much like the air is on the top. And you're creating almost like, think of a bread, like a crust all the way around it, so it bakes from the inside out. Again, a 16 ounce would be good for this size too. So what I'm going to do is walk us through the aluminum steel pan here. I guess it's steel, not aluminum. And what I do here at the restaurant is I take a can of spray, and then what I do is I'm going to take cornmeal. All right. This is yellow cornmeal, Kroger brand yellow cornmeal. You can get this on the shelf at Dillon's. It's really cheap and generic. You can also use semolina flour. A lot of pizzerias in Italy will use semolina flour, which is used for making pasta. It's a hard wheat flour as opposed to corn. But I like the corn texture on the bottom, and it also helps separate the pie. So I'm putting it in here, and then I just sort of I'm going to coat the inside of the pan like that. Okay. Now, set the pan out of the way. Let's talk about rolling out the dough. Some people in our kitchen like to use this rolling pin. It's tapered on both ends. I don't. It starts to hurt my hands. So I like to use the old-fashioned rolling pin that actually has the handles that will rotate. There's some theory that by doing this you're going to overwork the dough as opposed to the over rolling pin. But again, I just prefer this tool over the other. But not a big deal. Again, if for some reason you don't have a rolling pin in your kitchen, you should buy one. But you can also hand toss this, right? The stove's got enough flexibility that if we wanted to, we can loosen it up by hand. In fact, typically when we start, we get it to shape by doing that. Okay. Now, you can see that my pie dough, my pizza pie dough is larger than my pan here, right? I want it to be that way because I want to be able to create a little bit of a folded over crust. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. Again, this is preference. If you don't want to make it, fully extend out like that, that's totally fine. So I'm going to continue to roll it.
I'm curious if any of our attendees happen to be eating lunch while watching this video, and if so, if anyone's eating pizza right now, you get extra points.
So you can see this is quite a bit bigger. And that's kind of my cue when I'm rolling out dough, is it has this elasticity where you can see when I was rolling it, it kept coming back towards me as I would roll it out. Once it kind of exhausts that and stays in place, I feel like that's when I'm at my stopping point of rolling the dough. So then I'm going to pull the dough up. I'm going to kind of toss it over the pan, kind of like a blanket, right? At this point, I'm just going to let it loosely kind of slack into the pan, kind of like making a pie. You can see I got it short on this side, so I'm going to readjust just a little bit. Okay, and now this is how we fold it at the restaurant. We just work our way around folding the edge. This is actually my son Theo's favorite part of the pizza. He doesn't even want the pizza, he wants the crust.
I'm seeing people are eating minestrone soup with
Ooh.
Parmesan. Someone's making 5-minute no-knead bread while watching this.
All right.
Very interesting. Yeah, this is great. And I've had so many of your pizzas, Travis, and it's really cool to see it made.
Yeah, we do quite a few here on the daily basis. Noah, one of our pizza guys, and Barkley, who helps do the dough in the morning, those guys have been doing it for a long time, so they've gotten really good at it. They do a really good job, and I like them. I hope you guys like them too. What we're going to do here now is we're going to what's called docking the dough. We use this kind of primitive looking fork tool that's been in the kitchen since the beginning. It used to have a handle. It does not any longer, but we believe that this Poseidon-esque looking tool is crucial to the outcome of this pizza. You could also use a kitchen fork or anything you have, a knife tip or a toothpick, anything that has a point to it would work. But what I kind of do, I just go around the dough. I'm creating holes so that the steam can escape when we par it off, right? So that's what my pie dough looks like, all right? So I'm gonna go throw this in the oven and we're gonna talk about toppings. Sound good? Set a timer. Again, I'm at close to 500 degrees, between 450 and 500 in the convection oven. It's gonna be a 4-minute proof. If you're doing 375 to 425 at home with a non-convection, just a conventional oven, dial that down a little bit. Go about 8 to 10 minutes, check it so you don't burn it. Again, the indicating factors we're looking for some color on here, that what would be called the Maillard reaction. You want to see a little bit of browning of the dough, okay? So I'll be right back.
I don't think I've tried all of the Publix pizzas, but I used to always get the Thai pie. That was one of my favorites.
Okay, so
Do you still do Thai pie?
Yeah, so since we're here, we took the Thai pie off the menu.
Dang.
A lot of people have been frustrated about that. It's on the secret menu. If you want the Thai pie, ask your server for the Thai pie. We have the ingredients in-house to do it. We just don't have it on the menu currently. So a little insider information there. There is ingredients in-house to make the Thai pie. All right, so now let's talk about ingredients. I've got some asparagus tips from dinner last night, left over. Onion from like 3 nights ago. It's kind of dried out, right? It was sitting on the counter for a bit after dinner. Doesn't look the greatest. It's just leftover. And then a pepper that I had in the fridge that I cut up also. Again, the beauty of pizza here is toppings can be anything, right? You do not have to worry about having the most exquisite ingredients possible. You can really use anything you want. Let me go check on that dough real quick. All right, a couple more minutes. Pasta sauce is perfect. This is our pizza sauce we make in-house right here. This is also available in our pizza kits. It's a homemade tomato sauce. It's got fresh basil in there, some oregano.
Travis, I don't know if you talked at all about the pizza kits while I was having all those audio issues, but if not, will you tell people what that is?
Let me grab the dough and we'll talk about that. Carrie's going to grab it out for us in a minute. We're doing pizza dough kits to go. So what you get with that dough kit is you get 2 16-ounce pizza doughs made. You get our house-made sauce, and you get pizza cheese and pepperoni. Some crushed red pepper to sort of build your own pies at home. It'll basically give you enough ingredients to do 2 pies at home. So if you wanted to do this recipe on your own, you certainly can. If you want to, if you're busy, if you're still working, if you're an essential employee and you're kind of really having a hard time keeping it together right now, doing, running, as I am running a business, going home, seeing my kid, trying to have time with the wife, that sort of thing. We cut that shortcut out for you too. We're also selling our pizzas right now too. So any stage of this sort of dough process that you want made is available. We started selling those kits last night online. You can go to publicoldtown.com and click the link. It's carryout, and it'll be there on the link. We should actually have those available for delivery, hopefully by early next week. But it's, I believe, 2 for $19.95 or $99 or something like that. It's 2 dough kits on there that you can get if you'd like to take home with you as well. All right, I heard her open the oven. If you have pesto at home, if you make pesto or if you buy it, that's another great pizza sauce. Again, the versatility of having a pizza dough at this time, you can use any condiment in your refrigerator. Sarah Jane, your favorite pie, Thai pie, is maple sweet chili sauce. You can get, that's our sauce. Drop it right here, Carrie. Barbecue sauce is what we use for our Uncle Jesse. So, you don't have to be conventional. You can really go above and beyond what you want, or be resourceful, what's in your kitchen, to make a pie based on your sort of availability of ingredients or your desired tastes.
And so, those are like instead of marinara sauce, or in addition to?
Nope, instead, in place. So our house barbecue that we make in-house, we use it on our wings, and then we also use it as a base for the pizza. It's basically our sauce for the Uncle Jesse pizza. That smells good. So that's what your dough looks like, right? You got some color. Again, remember I was talking about the color. That's what you want to see. It's really hot. So. But again, I like those nice handles. That's why I fold that in on the side. Just kind of, I call it handle, a way to hold the piece of pie. If you wanted to use the stone, you could do that again. You do not have to use a pie pan like this, certainly. Again, I've had really good success with that flat stone. You don't have to spray the flat stone. You'll simply dust that with cornmeal and lay the dough right on there. You can do it more rustic style there without the handles. It can be like a big flatbread. If you do that, then maybe if you don't want to cut it up into smaller portions for the kids, you can maybe even do it to where each person gets to put toppings on their own individual side of the pie, right? Set it in the middle of the table at home and let everybody kind of dress different portions. So I know we're running out of time here. Let's go ahead and finish this pie. So I'm going to take roughly 3/4 cup of sauce. Hold it down. I'm going to dress my pie, right? At this point, I'm going to brush it with olive oil. Just brushing the crust. And this is going to help it to brown really nicely in the oven. If you don't have olive oil, you can use vegetable oil. You can use neutral oil. If you use a nut oil, be careful because it could burn. You don't want to use too much of it. All right, so now we've got it nice and coated. Then we're going to put on this is our house seasoning blend. You could use garlic, salt and pepper here. I just like to put a little bit of extra seasoning on the outside of the crust here. Salt and pepper would be fine. You know, whatever seasoning you have in the cupboard. Mrs. Dash. Onion, is that what you say, Carrie? Honey. Honey. Carrie says honey. Put the honey on after the fact, though, or it will burn in the oven. Okay, so now we got our dough ready to go. Pizza cheese. This is a mozzarella blend that we have in-house. That's in our kit, too. And I'm going to use about a cup of this cheese, right? Now on with my leftover red onions.
Is it, you know, since they're leftover onions, do they maybe have less water content? Does that actually help with them as toppings?
Certainly, yep. Very perceptive. Throw some of those asparagus tips on there. Pickles are really good on pizza too. And then I'm going to put just a little bit more cheese across the top here. All right. Now we're going to throw this back in the oven.
I'm hungry.
Me too. Carrie's eyeing me. I'm wondering if she's going to dig into the pie here in a minute. So the other thing that's fun about making the pie is you're going to make somewhat of a mess here on your table, as you can see. Again, this is a really good activity for the kids. You can make whatever you'd like. It also is something that, you know, if you're working still and you're going to the office and you don't want to go out and get food during the middle of lunch, you can take a leftover piece with you home. The other thing I really want to point out about this process is that once you made the dough, you can actually freeze it. The ingredients, you know, are okay. They're going to be stable. You can just wrap it up with some cellophane, put it in a Ziploc bag, pull the air out of it, throw it in the freezer, bring it back out. You know, and it's going to perform relatively well based on, you know, might not be 100% as good as it was fresh, but it's going to work really well for you. This is something that you can kind of stock up on. This is something where if you wanted to make a dough batch and, you know, take those 5 balls, freeze a few, and then keep 1 or 2 out for dinner, you wouldn't feel like you're wasting your time. It's also something at the, you know, if you are working, towards the end of the week, you can set up and make, you know, a variety of them for the week and then a variety of toppings for the week. Or maybe you're going to make lasagna or a couple other things for your family if you're a cook and you have leftover ingredients. You got the top of an onion, you got, you know, a little bit of leftover tomato here and there. You got some pickles. Use those ingredients throughout the rest of the week. You come home, you know, maybe if you have one frozen, throw it on the counter before you leave for work. When you come home that night, it's nice and thawed out. You can make a pie that night for dinner without being too exhausted. I think that's really the benefit of this being, again, kind of a blank canvas. You can really do whatever you want to the pizza pie. Let me go check on it.
I think it would be interesting to know from anyone who's in our chat right now if you do try this recipe and what results you get. If you want to share your story along those lines, just email info@kmuw.org and tell us what happened. That would be really cool. Oh, not done yet. Okay. But we are almost out of time, so we'll be wrapping it up shortly. I want to see that pie all baked up. Let's see if we have enough time.
All right.
Ooh.
Pie?
That's the one you just made?
Yeah.
It's not a trick pizza?
No, that's just the one that went in the oven.
That was pretty quick.
Thanks for spending your lunch hour with me, guys. Publicoldtown.com if you want any ingredients. We are open to doing carry out, and hopefully we'll have some other delivery options in addition to what we have right now. We're going to cut this pie up for you. Also, if you want, you can go to our Instagram page and message me. I'm here all day. I got time to get back with you. If I don't, I'll try to do my best at night too. If you have questions about this recipe or just food questions in general, I'll do my best to answer those for you. But here's what your pie ended up looking like, right?
Looks delicious. And you're open 4 to 8 for carry out?
Correct.
Is that right?
Wednesday, yep. Wednesday through Saturday, and then we've been doing some brunch during the day on Sunday as well.
Also carry out brunch?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Carrie, you want a piece of pizza? Looks good. Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Brooke messaged in the chat here that it's just you doing the cooking. You're staying quarantined as much as possible.
Right. My sister-in-law, Carrie, and I are.
We're jealous, Carrie.
Carrie's doing the dishes right now and hanging out.
Travis feeds me all the time. That's great.
That's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. We appreciate KMUW, and feel free to send any other questions and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Travis. And thank you all for joining our little lunch today. We really appreciate it. And everyone, stay safe and healthy, and we'll keep in touch.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a good day.